Hi, everybody. How you doing?
Okay, Khadijah, how are you tonight?
I am great.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Madam President.
How are you?
Okay, how are you doing?
I am grateful, thank you.
As always.
Absolutely. I'm here to tell it. Oh, God, I thank you.
Hey, can everyone see my raised hand?
Your
No.
what?
My
No.
raised hand.
No, what I see is a black screen on your name.
And can you all go to participants at the bottom of your screen?
No.
Just move your cursor over
Okay,
to
so what do you want to, once we
click.
go to participants?
Right. And once you go to participants, you see the participants there. It should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 of us now. At the bottom right, there is a.
Oh, yeah, raise hand.
If you want to test
Oh, I
that.
thought you meant, you're talking about if you want to ask a question.
Right. Could you?
Gotcha. Okay.
Could you guys test that, please?
Test participants.
It worked. My hand went up. I'm going to take my hand down, okay?
All righty.
Yes, I see you, Miss Alameen, with your hand. And Chief, are you CPD?
He's on mute.
I shouldn't be on mute.
Oh.
You're not, Chief. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you raise your hand so we can see that it works for you, Chief? Yes, you're CPD. Thank you.
Right. Okay.
Hi, Councilwoman Alameen.
Hey, how are you? I said hi. I thought
I'm
you were on
sorry.
there.
I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
spoke to everybody. How are you feeling?
Not very good.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'll keep it in prayer.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're certainly welcome.
Yeah, I might leave. I might. If I start feeling any worse, I'm gonna back out and have the vice president take the meeting.
Well,
But
you
for now,
have to take care of your health.
I'm sorry.
You have to take care of your health. That's just the way it is. When you don't feel good, you don't feel good. You should be laying down resting. I'm not a doctor, but I'm sure your doctor tells you that.
And does, but I'm
And I
tired
know
of laying down resting.
And I know it. And when you pushed yourself so far and said spread yourself so thin, sometimes you just need to do nothing and just relax. You know what I mean? Not necessarily sleep, but just do nothing and relax.
Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Logan. Mr. Logan,
Yes,
did you check the dash today? Did you see we went up 2 more cases?
I did. Yes, we are climbing.
Can you please put a hold on them cases? You're the city manager.
I would do more if I had the power. I would put a hold on the entire
Between
pandemic.
you and the chief, can we get that done?
We can't even take care of the cats.
Well, listen, if you can get rid of the COVID, we'll keep the cats, okay?
Okay.
I think I would have a new job if I could get rid of the COVID.
I'll say.
Change my name to Fauci.
Well, not necessarily if we don't let you leave.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be
There's
interesting.
handcuffs and shackles and bars downstairs. We could keep.
We can handle that.
I'm getting ready to say, chief can hook us right on up for that.
Yep.
I'm ordering my inflatable bed from Amazon next week.
What, for your office?
Yeah, for my office.
Yeah, you need one.
We're not going to have any snow this winter.
Oh, you sure about that?
I don't know, chief. Them squirrels. And you know, this is an old farmer's thing that my grandparents used to say. But like my girlfriend that has fruits and nut trees, the squirrels ate every single pear, every single black walnut. You know, the old farmers say that that's a sign of a very, very bad winter and a lot of snow.
God forbid.
We take all her pears every year because she cans and I can, and we can them all up. Not one single pear this year did they leave, not one.
I think it's a COVID thing. The squirrels are worried.
No, I don't think so, chief. That's an old farmer saying. That goes beyond the farmer's almanac, but I don't know. Look, I'd be all right if we didn't get an inch of snow, okay?
Mm.
I'm with you.
I got a message here from Miss Graves. It says, Miss Graves, I think you're on mute, or someone, can you unmute Miss Graves?
Yeah, no, I can hear now. When I first got in, the room was just quiet. Hey, everybody, the room was just quiet, so I didn't know if the audio was working.
All right, thanks. Ruth Ann, are we live on YouTube now?
But why are we sharing Miss Carmen's
Yes.
screen? Did I do that? Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing.
Ruth Ann, did you say we are live on YouTube?
Yes.
Oh, all right, thank you.
So who all do we have to this point?
I'll do a quick roll call. I'm just going to read out or read off from my list here. Chief Lawford,
EPD here.
thank you. Councilwoman Alameen,
I am here.
Council President Lavender Norris,
Yes.
Councilperson Graves,
Here.
Councilwoman Hunt,
Yes.
Councilman
Hey.
Wilkes,
Yes.
Ah,
Hey.
Councilwoman Green,
Yes.
hey.
Councilman Simpson.
Hey,
Hey.
I think
Is
you're on mute.
Councilman Simpson there?
On mute.
I think he's on mute.
I don't see something.
Listen, I got a new phone yesterday. My phone broke at the polls. So I don't have my tablet. I'm on my phone and I'm trying real hard to get this stuff together. I don't know how to use this phone.
Chief Alderman,
I'm here.
Jessica Arthur, think she's on mute.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. And Rich Troutman.
Present.
Hey, Ed, how you feeling? You're muted. Turn your microphone on.
I feeling pretty good. Yeah, I mean, back to work and everything like that, and just slammed right now, so I might have to go in and out here for a little bit, trying to get everything caught up. So,
Well, it's good to see it here yet.
yeah, it wasn't much fun, I can tell you that. It was not much fun at all.
Go Army.
There you go. They'll probably cancel that game. Oh, no, they're having it at West Point this year.
Yeah, home at West Point.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we have everyone here.
Okay.
Just a few program notes real quick. Again, if you have your screen up, and Rich, I'm just going to inform everyone of this real quick. If you have your screen up and your cursor is moving, at the bottom of your screen, you have an opportunity to chat. But the important thing is if you hit your participant button on the right side of your screen, all of the participants on this call will show up. If you look to the bottom right of that list, where it says raise hand, that will be your opportunity to chime in, stop, make a comment, ask questions. The reason why we're doing it this way is because with Zoom, when people start talking over each other, your square lights up, and then we'll have just a bunch of lit squares and probably won't be able to listen to what you guys are saying. So if you can just raise your hand, that way everyone will see it, and you can proceed with your comments or questions. Any questions? You don't have to raise your hand. Thanks, Mr. Folks. Rich, I'll turn it over to you.
And I'll turn it over to Ms. Lavender Norris for opening comments.
Very well. Good evening. First of all, to all my colleagues, and thanks for attending. This is our first budget workshop, the first of 4. Just for, public's information, we're conducting the workshops. During our workshops, there are no public comments, but you will be able to comment when we bring it to the floor for vote. You'll be able to ask questions at that point. So bear with us. Right now, we're just going through the budget and trying to ensure that you understand how our government is operating, where our revenue streams are coming from, and what we're working with. A lot of detail, a lot of information, and thank you for entrusting us to make the decisions. There'll be no decisions made tonight, nor votes taken. The meeting will be over at 8:30. So by 8:15, we'll start winding down to ensure that we're over by 8:30. We're going to try and stay within our time frame and respect everyone's time. So at this point, I'll just ask that you mute your phone as we proceed forward, and I'll now turn it over to our finance director, Mr. Richard Troutman.
Thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Logan for his comment.
All right, well, thank you, Rich. Again, thank you all for attending tonight. Just real quick, the objective for tonight is to begin the budget process. This is a significant juncture with the city in terms of our budget for next year, a little bit of direction of where we're going to go. And, this is a very important step to the city's future. A significant amount of time and effort has gone into this meeting, as well as the next series of meetings by our department managers, meeting with them, getting their insight, also to identify contractual commitments, streamline requests, factoring cost savings, and improve services. In each of our last several years, the city has spent more money than it actually has brought in. Then using reserve funds to balance the budget, it's just really created, some challenges for the city. So tonight and over the course of our workshops, we are going to lay out a plan that's going to get us hopefully back on track. In 2017 and in 2018, it was over $1 million each that we tapped our reserves for. And then in 2019, about $750,000 we used. This year, 2020, it's about $100,000. So over the years, we've kind of reduced our need to tap into the reserves, but nevertheless, we have to do that. So as we're looking forward, we have put together some strategies to help us not go to the well so often, and hopefully not at all. For 2021, we are presenting a budget that does not require, and I'm going to say this 3 times. In 2021, we are presenting a budget that does not require using any reserves. None.
Awesome.
None. This budget does not include real estate tax or trash increases as projected. Another plus. It does include a number of initiatives that will help us save money and generate additional funds. So we're very excited about that. You will hear a number of recurring themes tonight. 2 of the most influential are the expenses are generally fixed by agreements. You all know we have contractual agreements with our unions, or we have some increasing due to COVID. We've incurred some expenses during COVID. As you all know, the counties, municipalities, and townships and boroughs, we are all faced with additional COVID expenditures. Hopefully, we will hear from the state if and when those expenses will be paid. But right now, those had to be factored into our budget. Expenses such as Unity Day were canceled for 2020. So these will seem like brand new items compared to 2020 amounts. Just real quick on COVID. Regarding COVID, Easy Part is projecting the out-of-pocket expenses for 2021 and 2020. The hard part is projecting the amounts received from earned income taxes, EIT. Pennsylvania projected a 2.4 decrease for Chester County, but we expect a 1.4 decrease. Once again, PA 2.4, Chester County, in Chester County, but we expect a 1.4 here in the city of Coatesville. In 2019, the city grew at a 5.6 pace, and until COVID, it has stabilized. We will not be dealing with a solid data, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that to some degree, the city of Coatesville and parts of the county have been insulated from COVID. And there's a number of factors to why that is. And we'll talk about that throughout this series. The city is at the beginning of a 5-year strategic planning process. The budget is critical to start at a comprehensive review of the city structure and services. You all know that we received a grant from the state to implement a series of analysis that is to help the city maintain its upward trajectory. We're excited about that. And, as I said, this is the beginning of a 5-year plan that will hopefully point us in the right direction so we can have another year that we're not going to dip into our reserves. There will be modifications as final amounts are pending for new items, major premises reviewed, and council changes incorporated. So we're very excited about this evening kickoff, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Troutman to get us going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. And now I'll turn it over to myself.
Okay.
With that, thank you. So I'm going to thank everybody, obviously, for joining us. And our intent is to provide council with information so that you can make informed decisions regarding the 2021 budget. It's that simple. We're here to provide you the information so that you can represent your constituents. And so one administrative comment is, hopefully you saw in the email on the Zoom that we're asking that you go into tab 3 of your budget book and number the pages 1 through 39. What we found just internally was it's going to be easier to walk through the expenses when we get there if I can reference a sequential page number. So as I'm making some comments here, I'm asking that you number the pages in tab 3, 1 through 39. So I'm going to start with
Rich, Rich.
Yes, go ahead.
When you say start at tab 3, are you starting, number 1 would be starting at where it says 2021 changes from 2020? Is that going to be page 1?
Yes, that is page 1.
All right.
It is. So each of you received the 8 tabs, and we're going to start from the front and work our way through to the back. We're going to be dealing with tab 1 tonight, which is summary, tab 2 tonight, which are the general fund revenues, and we will start into tab 3, which are the general fund expenses. And as Ms. Lavender Norris noted, at about 8:15, we will start the wrapping up, so I won't be introducing anything new after that point in time. We want to present information to you in a summary fashion and then allow for questions and comments at that point after each section is presented to you. So within each of these sections that we're going to talk through, there's going to be a brief summary description, which was a request that one of you had made, that we give a little context. There'll be a schedule of the changes from the 2020 year, so you have context as to why the amounts are changing. And you also have information of a statistical data nature, percentage of the budget, percentage increase, those types of statistics. And with that, I also want to highlight under tab 5, there were a number of questions last year about how revenues that are generated that relate to expenses, how does that work? What are they? So this is a new section that we're presenting tonight, and we'll see how it works. And I'm not actually going to work through it tonight. I'm just making you aware of it, and we'll find out if it helps answer questions that you might have, and then we'll adapt and adjust as you want me to or us to, so that you get the information you feel you need. So with that, I'm going to start with tab 1. And so this is tab 1, and you're going to have a schedule that looks somewhat like the circles and squares that you see on a monthly basis in your board book. I'm only going to talk about the general fund tonight, which is the first section. You see that there's $11,677,033 revenues and expenditures. And as Mr. Logan mentioned, that ends up being a net surplus deficit of 0. You can see the 2020 is projected to be 0 as well at $10,183,670, which creates about a $1.5 million increase, which is 14.7%. That is a lot, and we'll work through why it is so high. That's the summary. Now I'm going to flip to, and I want to make a couple comments about this. I'm going to reiterate that there's no tax increase. The last tax increase for real estate was in 2016. We are projecting needing about $100,000 this year out of reserves, largely because the flats was delayed until next year, and we had COVID expenses as well. So those are primarily the types of things that happened for the current year. The reserve funds are at about $3 million. During the last few years, the city has continued to invest substantial amounts into infrastructure, roads, parks, and vehicles, heavy equipment. The budgets pertaining to these types of expenses will be presented at a subsequent workshop. We're not going to be dealing with the 5 other funds tonight. So specific so now I'm going to flip to tab 2. Tab 2, General Fund Revenues. We have, as a city, 2 major sources of revenue: real estate taxes and earned income taxes. Combined, they are about 2/3 of our total revenue. We have 9 other revenue groups. These are generally pass-through, fee-for-service type of revenues, where costs are incurred that offset these revenues. And there are a couple one-time events that we benefit from. For example, the RDA sales. The good news for this year, one of the things that's helped us not have to draw down is that our real estate taxes are projected to be about flat. Now, why is that positive? Because since 2007, every year the city has had an erosion in the taxable assessments. Combined, cumulative, $12 million. So our tax base has gone down since 2007 to 2020 by $12 million, which, translating that to actual taxes at the current rate, is about $165,000 a year. So because of reassessments, because of different events like that, we've had an erosion. And that has required something else to cover off that kind of erosion. So, but that has for the first time in those 13 plus years, we're looking at the assessment to be roughly flat. One of the benefits, there's two basic benefits, two basic reasons. One is that there are developments in the sales happening that we're all aware of. The other nuance is there were a couple exempt non-taxable properties that were sold to for-profit entities. So it's going to, when we see the tax duplicate next year, they'll be on the tax rolls. So there are a couple properties that change their character, and they're now going to be taxable. So that's another positive as to why we're projecting we won't be bleeding anymore out of the assessment. So now, I'll say it now, and it will probably come up again, is with all the development that's in the queue and about to happen, that's the good news, and we see it starting to happen and some buzz. What we're not going to see is the taxable input, the throughput into taxes for several years. They did the transaction, we got the tax transfer funds, they're going to be doing their development. That's what's going to cause a lot of pass-through for fees from permits, but it won't really hit the tax rolls for a couple of years for any sizable amount. And further, because of LRTA, it's even going to postpone the initial benefit for further years. So we are not going to see real estate benefit coming out of the development probably till the 2025 type of window. What I would like to do now is read into the record the page 1 summary. Revenues increased from 2020 are significant at 14.7%, but when looked at in context of the type of increase, there are only a few positive sustainable items. The vast majority of the increase is attributable to anticipated growth in permits, which are a pass-through. RDA sales are obviously helpful, but not sustainable. The positives come from earned income tax, advertising contracts, and increased licenses as a result of initiatives. Routine fees have been trending downward for years, being about 50% of 2015 levels in 2019. I'm going to pause there and go off script and explain that a different way. The day-to-day permits that have been requested and issued in the past years from 2015 to 2019 have decreased every year, so that in aggregate, in 2019, they were about 50% of what they were of the 2015 level. This was identified by the administrative team as an area that needed to be looked at and addressed, so a number of initiatives are being put in place to reverse that. So those initiatives are being undertaken. They're embedded in the budget to help us balance the budget, because we've been incurring the costs but had a degradation of the revenue. Back to the comments. The combination of increased fees and new focus on more thorough compliance should increase fees to a level that covers costs. For example, rental inspections cost more to perform than the city received. We were we were paying to have inspections done. Not a lot on each individual one, but it added up. Necessary but misleading are substantial increases to get the city back to prior levels, such as parking violations and code violations. Obviously, we took a hit during COVID where we weren't getting those revenues in. A couple real losses in revenues means more structural deficit to cover. Real estate transfer taxes and the COPS grant both basically went down or ceased in 2020. In summary, we've had some structural growth offset by structural losses, some cleaning up of fees to match costs, but mostly we have misleading revenue growth given its largely pass-through nature, permits. Notice the current real estate taxes are not commented on within the differences of this year in 2020 versus 2021. I explained why a few minutes ago. So that's the comments for the summary of revenue. What you see listed next on page 1 are 11 basic groupings of where the revenues are changing, and the permits are the one thing, and you can see those are quantified, what I talked to in the summary. I would suggest that one of the takeaways is that we cobbled together a couple of events, a couple of things happened, and we're able to balance the budget, but the components are not sustainable. This combination isn't sustainable. It gets us through the next year on a revenue process. What you're going to see for the rest of the section in tab 1 are the different graphs, historic trends, percentages of the budget, and different comments on each of the individual types of revenues. At this point, I'm going to stop and entertain questions.
Rich,
Yes, I see your hand up, Mr. Logan.
Thank you. In terms of, you mentioned LERTA a little bit earlier in your conversation or your comments. So we have a 10-year LERTA, and that was something that we all decided on. If we had a shorter period, which is, you have a 10 or a 5-year, what would that look like for the city of Coatesville?
We would come out, we would have bigger impacts sooner for revenue.
Right.
That would be the simple summation. If you have your books in front of you, if one looks at the page 4 of 11 in this tab 2, page 4 of 11, if you look on the lower right corner, you're going to see the taxable assessment value. It has a red downward bar that represents the 2007 through the 2020 degradation, erosion that I referenced earlier. And then the green bar is the increase for the development input. If one goes to the next page, which is page 5 of 11, it visually shows an added yellow bar. It basically pushes out any benefit on the taxable side because of LERTA. So what it would mean is the cliff that we've talked about with the reserve funds running out, the need to balance the budget on a sustainable basis. What the LERTA does is pushes that out. Now I'm talking in a context that is just responsive to your question. I there are clearly advantages that developers are looking to. And the question is, does the city of Coatesville, does it make a difference for developers for 5 years or 10 years when we're frankly a certain percentage of the decision process vis-a-vis school district impact or other reasons? So I don't want to come across as having an opinion on whether the LRTA is right or wrong. I'm just trying to inform.
Right, and I wasn't trying to get you to say if it was right or wrong. I'm just wanted to see, you know, side by sides are very important as we move forward. So looking at a 5-year versus 10-year, I think that's important. I think the next
I can certainly model that.
Yeah. I think the next person that had their hand up was Councilwoman Alameen.
Yes, I just have a couple questions. On page 2, Richard, of tab 3, not 2 of 11, but on page 2 of tab 3.
Oh, Ms. Alameen, if I may, can we park that till we complete tab 2? Tab 2 are for revenues, tab 3 are expenses.
I'm in tab 2.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry, go ahead. What page again?
So page 2, or page 3 in tab 2, but not
Okay.
like page 2 of 11, the actual page 3 in tab 2,
Yeah,
Okay.
where it said revenue.
where you have the total revenue percentage change from prior year.
Yes.
Okay. So number 7 under grants, why is there a 10.7% decrease in grants? Are we not anticipating getting any grant money, or are we not going to write grants? Why would that go down even more than it was in 2020?
Yeah, the specific answer would be the COPS grant ends in 2020. And so that's the main portion of it. And from the other side, to answer the question a different way, is if we don't have a grant that we're expecting to be awarded, I would not put it in as grant revenue, but I would also not put in the expense either.
Okay, so
Unless
the COPS grant ended October 31st, is that correct?
Almost. We're getting or anticipate being approved for the extension to December 31st, so that because we started the grant January 1st of 2018, we basically started 2 months after it was awarded. We have been told that we would get it approved so that we have a full 36 months so that we get all of the money and we don't leave money on the table. So,
Okay.
But in principle, your point is correct. It physically ends December 31st or October 31st.
31st. Okay. So item number 11, public safety. In 2020, we were at 26%. Can you please explain to me how we are jumping up to 252.1%? Item 11 on the same page.
Yes.
That might be.
Let me.
Rich, is that related to the park improvements? Our expenses going up there.
I want to look at the grouping that goes into that. So I'm going to ask that I can get back to you on the grouping of that, because I don't have it in my head right now as to what the exact grouping is.
Okay, that's fine. And what is the miscellaneous negative 62%? What does the miscellaneous cover?
The miscellaneous is largely because of the HMO filming. That is not projected for next year. So there's a negative there. And then there was a one-time benefit because we found I believe it was $26,000 item at the beginning of the year from 2016 or 17 that we had to record. So that's why those are two one-time items at this
Okay.
point.
And the transfer from the RDA that is up 94.8%, that is for what?
That is for the expectation of the sales that are expected to happen next year compared to this year. So this year we got a few of them, namely the 190 West and the Records Building. And there was one other small one, and next year is the flats and others that are projected to sell.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. If for some reason the properties from the RDA did not sell, that revenue, that increase of the 94.8% would not exist, correct?
Correct.
And then would that not then put us in a deficit instead of a truly, for the first time since I've been on council, a balanced budget?
Yes, all other things being equal. Obviously, we would look at our expenses. If something like that happened, we would look at the expenses and talk to council about how we would address a sale that got postponed or isn't happening. So we would have conversations, but in principle, you're right that is a large one-time component of the budget, and so that is a premise assumption that is critical to the budget.
Okay, so I would just like to make a suggestion if I could. Since that is an anticipated sale and not a guaranteed sale, and if the sale didn't happen, it would definitely put us in a 94.8% deficit instead of the plus column. Could we possibly have a meeting on a quarterly basis? Like, you know, me being on the finance committee, we used to have me and the other individual that was on the finance committee used to have meetings with you. So could we possibly have a quarterly meeting? Because God forbid if for some reason the property, you know, the flats don't sell or anything like that, I would hate to wait until a budget meeting in November to realize that we have that much of a deficit. So is there any way we could meet quarterly to just kind of keep a check on things to make sure that we are staying in line with having a balanced budget?
Can I answer that? I think one of the things, if you all recall, we've added to our monthly council meetings, Rich is going to be given a report to where we are, you know, current state, present state. So to answer your question, Councilman, in short, we will have that information on a monthly basis.
Okay, as long as we have it, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, you know, the numbers that we're looking at when we're looking at real estate in the city, I mean, these are projected. I mean, just all municipalities, they have projects, they project out, you know, what these revenues or these sales may bring to the community. We are not counting, I mean, as we have it projected here in terms of percentage, Rich has not put in real numbers in our budget because we don't know what those real numbers are. We don't know what the flats will sell for yet. So
correct,
to put it,
but the percentages show
they're just projections.
Correct. They are projections, but it's just like Richard said. If the projections don't go through, in theory, it would put us in a deficit. And I'm so very happy to hear that for the first time since I've been on council, we are actually presenting a balanced budget with no anticipation of pulling from the rainy day fund. So I am so happy about that. I'm beyond. I mean, I'm just elated with that. And so I just want to kind of make sure that to the best of our ability, that we stay there.
Yes, thank you. I understand. I think Carmen Green, Councilwoman Green, and then Councilman Simpson had questions. Thank you, Mr. Folks. Councilwoman Green.
He's muted.
I was trying to unmute. I'm sorry. Hi, how's everyone? Rich, I had the same question about the safety, so I'll wait for you to get back to us on that. And just really excited too about the finally getting some of these RDA properties. And again, I know that they are projections, but I'm very excited. That's a great boost to our revenue. Now in 2020, the 190 property, that actually sold, right? But there's
Yeah.
nothing in there. So that wouldn't go there for transfers from the RDA
Yes,
for
that would.
2020?
And for 2020, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but there's nothing in there. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I have to look at that because that would be, if it's missing, then that's clearly a mistake.
Now my
Because it was
other
sold
question,
January 3rd.
yeah, my other question is just back to the LERTA. Now I understand, the LERTA, and the reason why we were more prone to go with the LERTA, because in spite of the improvements, we're not going to get tax money on, but we're going to still receive the regular assessed tax on the existing property. And some of these properties weren't taxable. So that's a plus for the city, not a detriment.
Absolutely, Ms. Green.
Some of them have
If I
not
may,
had
we will
taxes
get.
paid on them. I'm sorry.
No, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm agreeing that there is absolute benefit, and we would get the tax off of the base amount. When I'm referring to that base amount is in the trend line already. So since it's the highest profile, the flats, for example, that base amount would become taxable. So we would get some money out of that. We just wouldn't get the super huge bang.
Yeah, we would not get what the improvements are. Gradually we would start to receive gradual increases from the improvement, but the bottom line is that we're not getting anything right now on any of them. The 190 is going to be now paying taxes, the record building. So to me, I mean, they're pluses. We're not going to get the improvement.
Yeah, we
but
will
we
get
are
money.
We are going to get the regular assess on the base of the building and the property.
Yeah.
The other question you had answered for me about the real estate taxes, and that was my question was, is that based on the assessment being lower? The decrease in the estimate for 2021, and that was because of the assessment. You had answered that. So my only other question is just waiting to hear what that public safety entails. And
Yes, and I have an answer for that.
Oh,
the
okay.
answer for both of your questions is that is where the increase from the permits goes through. So the permits roll into that grouping. So because of the $900,000 increase in permits, they're considered part of public safety.
Okay. Okay.
And if I may, if one would look at page 10 of 11, which is the RDA parcel sales page under tab 2.
Wait a minute.
So it's page 10 of 11 under tab 2, revenue analysis. it should say RDA parcel sales.
Mm-hmm.
The first row is 190 West Lincoln.
Yes.
So there were 3 sales, and those 3 sales added up to the 341,000, and then the current year includes the projection. When this was done, it was done with the projection of what was potentially coming from the downtown revival.
So we need
Closing.
to take that out though, right? Would you subtract that?
Depending on how the transaction happens with RDA. If it goes to closure, my understanding is the RDA has indicated that we would get every dollar of what their closing piece is out of the original 420,000. So that's what this represents.
So you're saying the amount for the RDA is owed is only 84,000, not 130?
Well, it's according to the audit and the footnote in the audit, it goes down by, I believe, roughly $35,000 a year. So what I did was I took a year's off of the December 2019 balance and used 84,000 as a rounded number.
All right.
So I'm going off of the footnote.
Mr. Logan?
Yes, Mr. Simpson is next in line. Questions?
So, number one, you have in here transfers, reserves, rainy day fund. How much is in the rainy day fund?
$3 million.
Where is that listed?
Well, that is an asset, so it would be listed with our bank accounts, and one place you could see it would be in the quarterly financial package distributed for the quarter 3 ended September, but I can get you that package and that page that would show you all the different bank accounts and cash balances.
Rich, can we just be clear that we have a reserve and you're labeling this as a rainy day fund? We do not have 2 separate funds. We don't have a reserve and we don't have a rainy day. You want to clarify that?
I absolutely agree with you. Just to be clear, we have one reserve/rainy day fund. The rainy day fund was closed out in February of 19 and consolidated into the reserve fund. We have one fund.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
And that's the reason why it's balanced this year, is because previously we had to borrow from that fund to make up the difference. But now it's already in an account, so we don't have to do that. So that's the difference between.
But we're not transferring.
Yeah, we have always had that reserve account sitting, and that's what we would draw off of in the past. And this year, as Miss Green just said, we do not have to, based off of the assumptions that are in this budget, we do not have to draw down funds in 2021.
Okay, so my other question was, you have the sale for the RDA of 828,000. That does not include the 425,331 for stuff that went through this year, correct?
Correct. It's a separate set of sales that I listed the potential options, but I have not specified amounts because they're subject to negotiations.
Okay. And where are we coming up with the 828,000? Where are we getting those numbers from?
I have a cheat sheet that supports that number that specifies the different math calculations for the different properties based off of different amounts that were shared with me, and I felt the appropriate thing to do because it's subject to negotiations and didn't want to disclose the specifics publicly. I'd be happy to
Right.
share it individually if that's appropriate, or how that's appropriate. I'm not trying to hide anything. I just don't want it.
I understand. I have the same concern that Ms. Alameen has, is that these are just projections. And I'm worried that as long as it takes for this stuff to go through, that, I think we might be counting on more than what we actually will have coming in. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Folks?
Yeah, back to that first question about the grant for the police department. Now let's get ready to run out. Maybe this is to chief, or are they going to apply for a new grant? How's that work?
I have to defer to the chief to respond.
Mr. Folks, we have not applied for continuing COPS grant based upon the amount of pushback we got from the last time we did a COPS grant. And since it's not 100%, since it's only a 50% match, the intent, or at least in my opinion, the general consensus from council was that they were not interested in funding any additional officers, even if it was at 50%. So we have not made application for any more COPS grants.
Wow. All right. Number two is, I didn't see in here about the sale of the dollar store. What was Walgreens? Rich?
Yeah, that was in 2020 that transferred and changed hands. That amount generated, I think it sold for $3,125,000. And so we got the real estate transfer off of that. They came in, did their permit work. That helped us with our revenues this year for permits. But generally speaking, that's a 2020 transaction.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions regarding revenues? I see no other hands and I will then move forward to expenses. So we will be moving to tab 3, and I will have some introductory comments. These are going to be the general fund expenses, largely considered different departments. The budgets were essentially zero-based, and as you saw from tab 1, the total expenditures are the same as revenue at $11,677,033. A vast majority of the increase from the 2020 is attributable to the pass-through revenues that have been mentioned about the permits, and going back to pre-COVID levels, which Mr. Logan gave the example of Unity Day. There's basically zero amount in 2020, so it's 100% incremental to put it back to the same level we had in 2019. So that's a reoccurring theme that causes a lot of the incremental increase in the expenses. There are a few other items that we're waiting for final costs on. Typically, the insurances don't come through until late November. So I build in a 5% factor for that. And if they come in, we can adjust the actual. If they don't, we will have to absorb or benefit from the difference next year based off of the actual final amount. So with that, the list of the biggest changes is on page 1 of the 39 pages. So page 1 says 2021 changes from 2020. And in that, I'll mention just the first couple. The permits, that's the pass-through costs that are projected as part of the permit revenue. LTL is going to be getting a lot of business, and Mr. Logan and I have had conversations about being tactical on how we can make sure they are servicing the city from a capacity standpoint, but also not accepting the status quo pricing, costing type of arrangement. We just have to frankly work through it. But for budget purposes, that's what it looks like. The second one is the capital reserve transfer. This gets a little complex to work through it, but in its simplistic approach is the capital reserve fund is where we track all the investments in our infrastructure. For example, the 3082 intersection. The way that contract work is structured, the hard costs are paid for by the grant. The soft costs for the engineering, inspection, etc., are paid for by the city out of pocket as a match. We don't have those types of projects in 2020, so we didn't need the transfer that we were expecting in 2020. So next year, doing these same projects, delaying them by a year, means that we're now going to have to pay those costs that we didn't pay this year, and so the incremental difference is the $375,000. And as a point of explanation, Ms. Lavender Norris, you were in a meeting a couple weeks ago when that number that I said was 400,000 is improved by 25,000. So I want to connect the dots for you back to that conversation that you were part of. So, and with that, there's the $1.5 million of changes, and it generally documents where all the changes are in the current budget. Page 2 is the departmental budgets on one page. Page 3 are percentages of the total budget. Page 4 are the incremental percentages. So one of you had asked for more percentages, so I had so this is what we came up with, and again, if it's too busy, we can work through it. Page 5 is a different capture of the expenses. Here, they're captured by type of expense. So all the payroll throughout the different departments is accumulated. So one can see that payrolls are 42.5% of our budget, as opposed to 47.2% last year. So that's what this is designed to do, is to give it a different type of look for those that prefer that type of approach. So with that, we are ready to start into the individual specific budgets. And based off of previous conversations, we're going to start with the police budget, which is page 16, 17, and 18. If you have numbered your book.
Yeah,
And
Rich, before you move on to that, Councilwoman Green had her hand up. I don't know if she received the answer when you were commenting.
Yeah, I'm awake. I put it down.
Oh, okay.
oh, okay. So I apologize. I'm focused on and Mr. Logan's done such a great job in helping with that. I very much appreciate that. What I would like to do is spend a couple of seconds, a minute or two, talking about a topic that was brought up at the last council meeting regarding part-time help and the budget and part-time officers. I would like to offer one of my approach as to how I look at part-time expenses for payroll. And I really start with what's the intent. If the intent is to add 2 or 3 more helpers to do more work, 3 or 4 more people to shovel snow, 3 or more people to do filing, something of that nature, then I would absolutely consider that a budget item because it's incremental money. If the part-time position is being hired to fill in for full-time people who are scheduled hours and are not available, those hours come from somewhere, and they would typically come from part-time work or from overtime. And I'm making a basic assumption with that, in that it determines whether the full-time hours need to be backfilled as a matter of fact, or can they be left vacant? Well, based off of minimum staffing requirements, minimum complements required in the shift from the shift work from the CBA, I would offer that the part-time police officers requested are justified from a cost basis, because we would have to pay from them from either part-time hours or from overtime hours. And frankly, if we have 4 people now, our odds are better to be able to have people available on a part-time basis if we have, say, 10. And that might sound like a lot of an increase, but based off of the authorized time off that police have in their contract, there are approximately 11,000 hours over the year that need to be filled by part-timers or overtime. So with that, I offer my approach, my thinking, and would be cost justified with less overtime, with more part-time help filling in. So that, I'll close down my comments about the part-timer issue, and will speak to a couple of points on the police budget as it's in front of you. Rich,
before you move on, we do have a question from Councilwoman Green.
Sure. Well, Ms. Green?
Yes. Since you started talking about overtime, I wanted to comment. Now, I just want clarity for the overtime. Now, when we have a contract, is it with CTDI or is it with the helicopter company?
CTDI, CTDI, not Sikorsky.
Yeah, so CTDI. So when our officers work the contract for CTDI, are they working on overtime now? And the reason I'm asking is, are they working on overtime, Chief, when they do that?
Well,
are they being paid?
Yeah, let me just clarify something. We don't have a contract with them. We're actually requested for mutual assistance through the local police department. So we are there under the authority of supplementing the local police department. So that's how we have police powers in a municipality. Just like right now, Cowan Township is requesting our assistance to cover for the Netflix project that's going on. So the only way we can send an officer to help them is we are supplementing the Cowan Township Police Department, and that's our authority to be there with police powers. So it's no different. It's no different than it is when we do CTDI. We are being requested by the local police department because they can't provide the number of officers they need for that detail. So that's how we're out there with police powers. And yes, it's all overtime paid for at our current overtime rate of 75 an hour. And it's in addition, it's when officers are on days off. So it's not taking away from coverage in the city. It's just additional hours worked by an officer on a day off through the local police department.
And we get paid for that?
That's correct. We get reimbursed.
So-
Currently, at last year's reimbursement was $75 an hour.
That's what I was-
for
that was
any
my next
overtime, whether we're doing it to fill spots for Count Township at the basketball and football games, or with Netflix
That was my
in this
question.
case. So yeah, so
If
that's
we're paying,
Yep.
if we're paying 75 an hour, is that what we're billing them, $75 an hour?
well, we're not
That
paying
was
our
my
guys $75 an hour. They're just getting they're just getting their standard overtime rate. But we
Okay.
bill at $75 an hour to cover for benefits and to cover for the cost for the fuel.
Okay.
So the officers are only making what their normal overtime rate would be.
So they're
so
not
this-
they're not getting a stipend from the reimbursement. That's what I'm
No.
asking.
No, they're just getting on what their normal overtime rate would be if they worked an hour of overtime, and then the city's pocketing the rest.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman Green.
Can
Councilwoman
I,
Allen?
and I'm going to add a point of clarification to that is the chief and I had a conversation a week or so ago. They're going to start looking at their costs per hour and to see if it's appropriate to have an increase for that. But that's a nuance that we're working through.
Yeah, because currently, Coun's current rate for 2020, they jumped it up to $85 an hour. So we are currently getting reimbursed $85 an hour for the Netflix coverage for Count Township. So we will be looking at probably adjusting our rate for out service overtime starting in 2021.
Thank you. Councilwoman Allen?
And I'll follow up on that with we have this year segregated the cost from overtime to overtime that's reimbursed so that you and we all have more definitive information to capture what's being paid. And we also have a revenue line item for reimbursed overtime. So we're able to track those against each other. Next.
Thank you. Councilwoman Allen, please.
That was actually my question, Richard. I'd like to know where in here it's listed. It like when they're out either in Callan or CTDI, is that listed under a separate line item for the cost? Or does that just fall under overtime? And when the reimbursement comes in, where is that listed? And where does the differential from the actual officer's pay, like Chief said, Callan's now paying $85 an hour. So where is the differential of the balance between the officer's pay and the amount of money we're being received? Where is that listed? And where does that money actually go? Does that go in the general fund, the police department? Where is it actually listed as a line item in the budget?
Okay, let me tackle that in a couple different pieces. First, approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows down is a line called overtime reimbursed. That would be the pay. That would be the pay that the officer receives on their City of Coatesville paycheck.
Okay.
Next, we created that this year, and then we went back historically. The admin person in the police department provided the information for us. Next, what I'm going to do is, remember at the beginning of the session, I talked about creating some new schedules that compare revenues to expenses when they match or supposed to be matching. If one would go to
Yes.
tab 5, the second page is the first page of spreadsheet. Toward the bottom is a grouping called police overtime.
Mhm.
That's where we're starting to show the line item 1801 being the expense, and then the revenues that are attributed to that overtime.
So when money,
in this, so I would say that in this case, we're saying that we're going to make $15,000 out of paying the officers $40,000.
okay, so when the money,
Go ahead.
when the money comes in from CTDI or Callan or wherever the, prospective places that they are providing services at, is that money paid to the city of Coatesville or does that go to the
Yes.
police?
It is paid to the city of Coatesville, and it goes through the cash receipts upstairs, and so it goes into the general fund bank account.
Okay.
And so, okay, does that help answer that series of questions?
You answered my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is I'll go ahead, Mr. Simpson, I believe, had his hand up next.
Mr. Simpson, you're on mute.
I guess my question is, for this year, for 2021, the upcoming year, you're saying we're going to make 15,000. All right. For last year, it was 110. The year before that, it was 75. And the year before that, 21.9, 41, 44, 28. Why is it only 15 this year?
Look at the paperwork.
Couple reasons. One is that 2021 was because of the drug task force was a large part of that, and that was that extra check that the chief secured through the county at the very beginning of the year. So that was roughly an $80-some thousand check off the top of my head. But generally speaking, Mr. Simpson, and to all council, I don't have a really, really good handle on how much incrementally we should be making. I just know that we should be covering our costs, and so I would consider it as found money for being a conservative approach.
If I could just add, Mr. Simpson, I will be revisiting with the new district attorney her thoughts on continuing that reimbursement for 2021 to cover that one officer's salary for doing the drug work involving the county and the overtime that was provided for 2020 that covered his salary. So, hopefully we're going to revisit that with the new district attorney, and she will be of the same mindset as the former district attorney was, and see that we receive that money for 2021.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Ms.
Folk?
Uh,
I think Ms. Green had her hand up.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to clarify the 40,000 is including the contracted services to the other municipalities. The drug task force is 15, the special police services is 25. And that's how you arrived at 40, is that right?
Yeah, it is all encompassing and obviously is a rounded number because we don't know what different entities will request of the chief, and so we we picked a reasonable estimate, and we benefit if it goes up. If HBO comes back, if any number of scenarios happen, then both the revenue and the expense would increase. So we did this so that we did it this way so that everybody would be able to see that there's a reason the overtime is going up and it's being covered.
We have Mr. Folks and Councilperson Graves after that.
I just want to back up about the overtime and the police department. I heard Rich talking about it would make sense to get more part-times in. Chief, there's a question for you. How many police officers per citizens do you need for a city of this size?
I don't know what the specific formula would be, with breaking it down. We can make do with what we currently have. As council is well aware, there was a time, 2010, 11, 12, when we were at 35 full-time officers. And at that point, that was deemed to be required based upon different things that were going on in the city and different redevelopment plans and so on and so forth. They were at 35 full-time officers. Then, things happened, and in 2012, we pared that back, and in 13, we brought in the part-time officers to replace the hours that were lost from going from 35 full-time, down to 25. So that was the agreement with the union to drop from 35 to 25, basically minimum staffing, and then bring in the part-time officers. So to answer your question, where we currently are, and if we had our sort of a full complement of part-time officers, I believe that we're in a position to still have the savings that we've been able to enjoy for the last 8 years, but also provide a basic level of police service that I think serves the citizens well.
That's it. Thanks.
Councilperson Graves?
Yes, so I was actually going to ask, because there are several things that we don't have on our budget, and we have a lot here. I was going to ask, is there any, it looks like most of the budget for policing goes to wages for numbers of officers. Is there any way we can renegotiate the minimum number of officers with the policing union? Because it looks like that line is the third line item for wages, has increased by like $400,000 over the last 6 years. And then there's just small stuff that like we used to spend much less on, like office supplies and parking enforcement supplies. That went up like almost $10,000, and it looks like that is like the biggest increases are wages and the way that we're using supplies. And also, do you guys get new uniforms every single year?
No, we don't get new uniforms every single year. This year was the year that we got new short sleeve shirts and pants. We had gone, I believe it was 3 years prior to that from our last uniform when we got long sleeve shirts. So no, we don't get new uniforms every year. We do it based upon, the service life of the uniform and try to be as good stewards as we can of the taxpayers' money.
Okay. Because I just had I'm like, oh, we just got, we have a budget. We did meet our budget for uniform last year. So is the new uniform just in case you hire new officers, or because don't you guys have a uniform stipend too that you get at the beginning of the year for like uniform repairs and stuff too? Or is that in this budget? Is that part of the stipend?
Rich, maybe you could answer where that appears in the budget.
Yes. So what Councilperson Graves is referring to is specifically the cost center ending in 2380, approximately halfway down the first page. That reduction of $8,000 reflects that they don't need the complete complement of what they got this year, and consistent with going with a zero basing approach, we were not going to leave the budget at the same dollar value. It was appropriate to reduce it to the level that was projected. So now, what is that $27,000 comprised of? It is comprised of two things. One is a uniform allowance. So if one would flip to tab 4, and tab 4 has the individual compensation for each individual position in there, and 3 columns from the right is everybody's uniform allowance. That is in the contracts.
Okay.
So that amount is in the contracts. And the other component is, I don't have the specifics, Chief, in front of me, but I recall the other component was for the something about shirts or something that were not included this year, but are up for cycling in. And I honestly, I forget which part of the uniform it was. But there was a rationale for making it 2 components. The individual
Right, yeah.
contractually...
Exactly. The first component is what you just mentioned, is that it includes the clothing allowance, which is now payable in a lump sum in January to each of the officers. And that's not meant to purchase uniforms with. We're still contractually obligated through the contract to provide a complete uniform for the officers. That money is for things such as dry cleaning, any alterations they may make to the uniform, purchase of small tools and accessories, flashlights, batteries, handcuffs, things like that, just incidentals throughout the year that a police officer uses in the course of his employment. And then the second part is we still need a small amount, even though we're not purchasing new uniforms, we still need a small amount for maintenance throughout the year for uniforms, such as if an officer tears a pair of pants going over a fence chasing somebody, we are obligated as a department to provide them with a new pair of pants. So we do need a small amount of reserve money each year in that fund to do uniform replacement. And then also if we have any new hires, for a full-time hire, we are responsible for providing them with a complete uniform set. Even though they may be a part-time officer that is now promoted to full-time, as a part-time officer, they pretty much use the hand-me-downs that are in our closet to outfit themselves with a uniform. But when they become full-time, then we're obligated by the contract to provide them with a nice complete set, winter, summer shirts, pants, to outfit them properly to be a full-time officer. So we still need some money in that account above and beyond the individual reimbursement to the officers in January so that we can maintain everything throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Chief. And so I guess the main question that I have is how can we bring down the amount of officers that we have so that we're not spending so much in wages? Because that seems like the biggest piece of the police budget. And Rich, are you only taking questions about the police budget right now, or because I had a few questions about the overall budget too?
Let's talk through the police budget, and then we'll determine if it's appropriate to tackle the big picture or if we go into the individual department. So I'm going to ask respectfully you park that part of it, and I'll give some comments on your question about the staffing. You are correct in that the police budget, as well as most of these labor-intensive budgets, are fixed given contractual requirements with the CBA. So the CBA for the police is over at the end of 2022. So I would direct you to page 18, page 3 of 3 of the police section. And one would see that on January 1, 2022, in that box on the middle of the page, that there's a targeted reduction of 3 FTEs. Because of right now, we are contractually obligated for that staffing level. And so that would be the opportunity where 3 of the positions could be reduced, rechanneled, whatever the right adjective is appropriate. But we've looked at and presented this budget based off of what's contractually framed right now. It would require council I would think it would require council to direct Mr. Logan to have discussions if that was the intent of council. And what we see is above it is the FTE distribution, and you see just below the double lines is where the part-time officers are at 4 and suggested it goes to 12. And to somebody's question previously or comment, one would see on the first page, page 16, that the overtime is down because we're looking at our internal overtime going down because we're using part-time hours that are cheaper. I think, and then there's a couple other points since I'm talking about the budget. On the second page, page 17, once the totals are there, and this is the same format generally for each of the department budgets. In this case, there's an extra row called revenues generated. It's 578,908. That's the total amount of all the revenues that are generated or attributable to our police costs. And one of the largest is the parking enforcement. The costs of parking enforcement are in this budget. What you don't see in this budget are the offsets, what's generated from it. So that's the 579,000, and you can see historically it's been substantially higher than that. To Mr. Simpson's question before, we're looking at these types of things as being a conservative number, and if we err, we want to err so that it will be better and not a gotcha surprise. You can see the expenses as the list of changes, and you can see that these are basically fixed or required types of expenditures, the pension, the bargaining compensation. So discretionary, all other types of items, the budget is going down by 68,000.
If I could just following up on what Rich said and what Nadia had mentioned, 95% of our budget is fixed. So that leaves us only a very small sliver of the pie, so to speak, of which we have control over our expenses. And as Rich mentioned, this budget reflects a decrease in those expenses, that 5% that we do have control over. This budget reflects a decrease in that. And also, I would just add that as far as, Nadia, I know you mentioned the office supplies. Actually, what we did was we combined 2021 or 2120 rather forms into our office supply line just for, Rich made that suggestion for accounting purposes, just to clean it up. And that's why you see an increase on office supplies from prior years as we combined two line items, which increased the one line item, but was actually an overall decrease in the overall amount.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief.
We have two additional questions, one from Councilwoman Green and Councilwoman Lavender Norris.
My question, Chief, well, more Rich. Considering the fact that we have a discretionary vote coming up with regard to our list of part-time officers, are you saying it's a better financial decision to go along with the 4 part-times as opposed to hiring 2 full-time?
Financially,
Yes.
yes, absolutely. And I would suggest that it should be more than 4. I think frankly, the chief went for too low of a number. Now it might be that's all that's on the list. But as a point of clarification, the math supports 10 to 12 part-timers, and that's the best mix to save the overtime. We're not going to eliminate all the overtime, but we can save a chunk of overtime by going with that complement of part-time officers.
And Chief, you're down how many officers at this point?
Currently, we have 5 active part-time officers. As Rich mentioned, I asked for 4 conditional officers, be approved last meeting, and that's only because that will exhaust our current civil service list. So that's the most that I can ask for right now. And then we are advertising for a new testing process to start in January to develop a new list, for part-time officers that we'll be able to draw from for 2021. So even if I would doubt we would get all 4 through the whole process, background, psychological, medical training, and get them actually, ready to hit the street as a part-time officer. I doubt we'll get all 4. History has shown we will not. So, we will still be well under our goal of 10 to 12 part-time officers, probably through the rest of next year. I don't see us being able to get to 10 or 12 really before the end of next year.
Very
May
well.
I add to that, as a point of clarification or a friendly reminder? It's my understanding we have effectively 2 permanent full-time vacancies, given the retirement on Saturday of 1 and the long-term disability. So we're already pushing the 4 individuals, or the 5 part-timers, pushing their hours. So I'm looking at it from a purely math standpoint and economics.
Rich is correct. That's not the 4 part-time officers, conditional officers employment. That's not going to address the fact that we need to hire or promote 2 part-time officers to full-time to replace our current complement, which is now, provided we're able to settle the one workers' comp issue, non-job related, hopefully Monday night. And then also tomorrow night, Corporal Michaels, one of our longtime corporals here, is scheduled to be sworn in as a lieutenant with the West Brandywine Township Police Department. So his retirement will be effective the end of this pay period. So, it's a big loss for us, a big loss for the city. Corporal Michaels was well respected and well thought of, I know, by most of the community and certainly by his fellow officers. So, we will be looking at, coming back to council here once that is all official and asking to promote 2 part-time officers to full-time so that we can maintain our current complement of full-time officers in addition to trying to get the part-time complement back up somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12.
Thank you.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna have to leave right now. I gotta go meet a driver, so, I'll look forward to the next meeting. All right,
Be safe.
Thanks,
all
Councilman.
right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson.
You're welcome.
James, did you acknowledge me as a question?
I did.
Okay. Rich, my question was, we did table, ask to have that put back on the agenda at our next meeting. So did you incorporate those numbers into the salary lines?
Yes, yes. Yeah,
So-
one would see that on the FTE complement, there's 12 part-time officers factored in, and the part-time dollars are the fourth line down on page 16 is $323,712. That is factoring in the complement of hours needed to be backfilled.
How about the full-time officers? Are they in the budget? Did you put them in the budget?
Yes, the full-time $2.4 million
That
includes the sworn officers that are contractually required complement and the administrative personnel that are paid on an hourly basis. They're combined in that row.
What I'm asking is, we're having to promote 2 part-times to full-time. And the amount of part-time that you're wanting to hire, are they all incorporated, I'm asking,
Yes,
in the budget?
yes,
If I could just add, as far as the full-time hires would go, we would actually be experiencing a cost savings in next year's budget. Rich could speak to that because we're replacing two senior officers with
Yes.
entry-level position officers. So there would be a cost savings to that, right, Rich?
Yes.
yes. And if one wants to trace it through, one could go to tab 4 and look to row, I just had it, row 21. About the 5th column in, last name is vacant, first name is Michaels.
Yep, I see it.
So that position is budgeted. And then, as Chief said, there is the domino effect that the person filling that position gets the promotion, the person backfills that position, and ultimately someone comes in at a patrol P rate, which is the lower rate.
Yeah, I just wanted to ensure that the salaries reflected those numbers. Like it's not going to be a change to it. That's all.
No, we have Chief and Kelly and I sat down and went through the math and to ensure that it was complete.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick note, it is 8:15. We are approaching 15 minutes before 8:30. So it looks like we will not be getting 2 additional tabs. So please mark where we're going to leave off in the next 15 minutes.
I appreciate you hanging in there, Council President.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I waved at you. I thought you were going to be signing off, but I appreciate you staying here.
Thank you,
You
love.
made it through.
I'm glad to be
Persevered.
able.
Chief, I have a question. With the longevity of the officers that we've had, do we have any idea what's contributing to the recent turnover or leaving the department?
Well, the 2 positions we currently have, one is a 3-year workers' comp issue that we've finally been able to work through for a non-service related disability retirement. So that will create the 1 vacancy, and then the other vacancy is pretty much Corporal Michaels had a career opportunity, that I think he thought was a good move for him. And he decided, thought about it long and hard and decided it wasn't an easy decision, but he felt it was best for him and his family as a career development move to take the position with West Brandywine as a lieutenant.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilperson Graves, and then we have Councilwoman Alameen. Good question.
Yes. So because we're just wrapping up, something to think about for next time is we don't have any money budgeted for our transportation system, and I think we should consider creating some parts of the budget to expand transportation in Coatesville. And also, our budget for the community center is just about $7,000, and if we are aiming to try to do work to get the community center open, it's going to take more than $7,000 throughout the year to maintain it. And so I just wanted to flag those two things, coming into the next meeting.
Right. We do have plans for the community center. We have submitted, and we're entertaining investors looking at it. We have a grant that's pending right now for $250,000 for restoration of parts of the community center. So we're definitely on that one. In terms of the transportation, I have been in discussions with CRAFT and SEPTA and TMAC. And as a matter of fact, there is a contribution which the city many years ago used to give or contribute to the transportation system in Coatesville, but due to budget restraints, we had to cut back on that. But Mr. Phelps from TMAC has presented to the city through a letter requesting an investment for 2021. So I will be bringing that to council.
Okay, and what will we get back out of such an investment? A bus that comes at the half-hour mark, or
no, to increase a timetable like that to have more frequency, if you will, that would be an upwards of about $75,000 to add an additional bus to the existing route as it is. One of the biggest challenges in the city of Coatesville, although we know that people use transportation, it's the ridership that's very low. So if you don't have ridership, then basically you can't increase the bus service.
Yeah, I mean, I am a bus rider, and every time I'm on the bus, it's crowded. I mean, the pandemic has changed that circumstance, but I don't know how people ain't riding it when the bus is full. So, but okay.
I'll get you numbers. I think, as a matter of fact, Councilperson Graves, we have you scheduled to join us on that next call with CRAFT and SEPTA.
Okay. Yes. I just wanted to make sure we were budgeting out some money to try to, support increase in transportation, because it looks like we haven't done it in years and years. And there's a lot of things on here that have way more than $75,000 that, and I think this would be real helpful.
Yeah, I'll bring that to council for that decision. I think Ms. Alameen, you have a
Yes,
question?
I do. This question is actually for Chief. Chief, the officer that is out on a non-work related workers' compensation that you were speaking of earlier, he's been out for 2-3 years now.
It was 3 years last month when he was injured. It's a little complicated, but he was injured in the line of duty in October of 17 and was out on workers' comp. And then it got a little complicated.
Right, I'm familiar with his situation.
So his initial injury, duty related, was October of 17. So he has not been back to work since.
Okay, and so we have functioned for all 3 of the years without him, but I heard you say you need to replace him. Why would that be?
Well, in some ways, we benefited from the COPS grant because the same month that he went out injured is when we accepted the COPS grant. So we've been covered, if you look at it that way. But basically, you know, we're trying to make do with, right now we have 4 part-time officers. So the simple answer to that question is it has cost the city money in overtime dollars to replace that officer for 3 years.
I would concur with that comment. The position was backfilled with part-time hours and with overtime hours.
And you said how many full-time officers do we have?
Currently?
We have
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rich.
27. 27, not counting the chief and the lieutenant. We have 27 that are part of the CBA staffing complement. And I'll defer to the chief
Lieutenant
to
not
speak
work
to
out
how
on the
many.
streets?
Sorry, what's that?
I'll defer to the chief, yes.
Does he
I
said,
got a question.
he
I'm
said,
sorry.
he said, not counting you, and I get that, but why wouldn't Lieutenant Aldet be counted? Doesn't
Well-
Lieutenant Aldet clock hours? Doesn't he?
No, I mean, the lieutenant and I are non-bargaining unit members. So, you know, we're not part of the, you know, considered part of the complement for the 25 officers.
Okay, and what does the contract? We currently have 27.
That's correct.
You said we have to have 25?
Well, that was the agreement with the union in 2012. There was a minimum staffing number was 25.
Okay, so we are meeting their requirements.
Currently, yes, with the one officer is the COPS grant officer. And then the other officer over the complement of 25 was an agreement with council, you know, going back probably 6 or 7 years or 5 years, where we decided to do a full-time truck enforcement, mix-app enforcement officer position because of the amount of truck traffic we have here in the city and the concerns for safety. So that position was in addition sort of to the 25. So that's where we are at 27 currently.
You said council approved a position?
Yes.
Okay, so 25 and 1 is 26. How did,
The COPS grant, additional officer for the COPS grant makes the 27th officer.
right, well, that grant's getting ready to end, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, the reimbursement period will end, but we are contractually obligated through the COPS grant to retain that complement for an additional year.
But if he was retained, he still counts within the 25 minimal that we need, correct?
No, we have to technically by the letter of the contract for the COPS grant, we need to maintain the 27 for the life of the grant plus 1 year.
So wait a minute. The COP grant changed our contractual agreement from 25 to 27?
No, it has nothing to do with the CBA. It's just that whatever our complement was at the time that we applied for the COPS grant, which was 26 at the time we applied, whatever the complement is, you have to maintain that plus the COPS grant position for the life of the grant plus 1 year. So that's why we're at 27. Because the theory behind it is the federal government doesn't want to be subsidizing budgets. The idea behind the whole COPS grant program is to provide additional officers to service the community.
Yeah, I get that, but when you apply for that grant, that adds the obligation of us keeping an additional officer after the grant money has run out, which that
For
they
one,
don't
only,
pay
only
that.
for 1 year though.
Correct, but
Yes.
that 1 year comes out of our budget, chief.
Yes, it does. Just like the 50% did the other 3 years too.
Correct.
Yep.
And so all of that needs to be looked at. I mean,
Right.
I'm just looking at it because I'll keep my thoughts to myself for right now. That's the
Okay.
only question I had.
We're at 8:28, 2 minutes left in our meeting time frame. Councilwoman Green, I heard you say you had a question. Can it be posed and answered within those 2 minutes or no?
He's muted.
Carmen, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to talk about TMAC. I can wait until the next meeting. It doesn't have to be shared now. Just wanted to talk about that and what that all entails.
Right.
Because we had the extended service for quite some time. We did not have the ridership and we did not have the cooperation from surrounding municipalities.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Again, with respect to everyone's time, we will be closing this meeting, and our next meeting will be on the 11th, November 11th. And please, any and all who have followed this Zoom meeting, return and get more understanding. And we look forward to seeing and hearing from you also, maybe in our council meetings. With that being said, Mr. Logan or Mr. Troutman, do you have anything you need to say before we close?
No, we'll pick up on page 6 of tab 3 next meeting. So I look forward to conversation. Thank you for all your support.
Mr. Logan?
Mr. Logan?
Oh, that's
Thank
about
you,
it. I was
Rich.
just going to say, Rich, thank you for putting this book together. It looks great. And council
No,
member
Jessica. Jessica.
Jessica, and well, the finance department. But I also wanted to thank council members. Again, this is the time of year we look at things, we revisit things. It's clear that we have pivoted in a lot of areas. So we just hope we can continue the conversation. And then when we come back on the 11th, we'll pick up again with some great questions, and hopefully we can provide you with some of the answers to your earlier questions too. Thank you.
Have a good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Everybody have a blessed
Good night.
evening. Be
Thank
safe.
you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Everyone,
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, Chief. Thanks,
Okay.
Chief, for your help.
you're welcome.
Bye.
Be safe. God bless.
All right.
Same here.